The stagecoach lurched to a violent stop outside the White Pine, Nevada Mercantile, kicking up a cloud of dust that settled on Lily Hammond's already travel-worn dress like a second skin, and she knew before the door even opened that her carefully constructed future had just shattered into 1,000 irreparable pieces. The year was 1878, and Lily had traveled nearly 2,000 miles from Boston to become the mail-order bride of a prosperous rancher named Gerald Morrison. The letters had been proper, respectful, filled with descriptions of his successful cattle operation and his need for a refined woman to help him build a respectable household. She had imagined a comfortable life, perhaps not passionate, but stable and dignified. Her father's death had left her penniless, and her options in Boston had dwindled to either accepting charity from distant relatives who made their disdain clear, or finding a husband through more unconventional means. At 23, she was considered dangerously close to spinsterhood by Boston standards, though she had never lacked for intelligence or spirit. The driver, a grizzled man who had barely spoken 3 words during the entire journey from Carson City, opened the door and extended a weathered hand. Lily gathered her carpet bag and the small trunk that contained everything she owned in the world, stepping down into the afternoon heat that hit her like a physical force. White Pine was smaller than she had imagined, a collection of wooden buildings that looked like they had been thrown together in haste and might blow away just as quickly. The main street was wide and dusty, lined with a saloon, a general store, a blacksmith shop, and what appeared to be a boarding house with peeling paint. A woman emerged from the mercantile, wiping her hands on her apron. She was perhaps 40, with kind eyes and premature gray streaking through her dark hair. "You must be Miss Hammond," she said, her voice gentle but tinged with something that sounded like pity. "I'm Dorothy Chen. My husband and I run the store." "Yes, I'm here to meet Mr. Morrison," Lily said, trying to keep her voice steady despite the growing sense of unease in her stomach. "Is he coming to collect me?" Dorothy's expression confirmed Lily's worst fears before she even spoke. "My dear, I think you should come inside. There's something you need to know." The interior of the mercantile was dim and cooler, shelves stacked with everything from canned goods to mining equipment. Dorothy led her to a small room in the back that served as both office and living quarters, gesturing for her to sit in one of 2 worn chairs. Through the doorway, Lily could see a Chinese man arranging boxes, presumably Dorothy's husband. Their presence in White Pine spoke to the mining boom that had drawn people from all over the world to Nevada, though she knew such marriages between whites and Chinese faced considerable prejudice. "Mr. Morrison passed away 3 weeks ago," Dorothy said softly, sitting in the other chair. "His heart gave out. It was sudden. We tried to get word to you, but the letters must have crossed paths with your journey." The words seemed to come from very far away. Lily sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, trying to process what this meant. She had no money for return passage. She knew no one in Nevada. The small amount she had brought with her would last perhaps a week if she was careful. "I'm not what he ordered," she heard herself say, the words strange and distant. "I mean, he ordered a bride, but now there's no one to." "We'll help you figure something out," Dorothy assured her. "You can stay in the boarding house for now. Mrs. Sullivan, who runs it, is a decent woman. And there might be work, though I won't lie to you. Options are limited for a woman alone in a mining town." Lily nodded mechanically, but her mind was racing through possibilities, each one bleaker than the last. She could try to find work as a teacher, though she doubted White Pine had a school. She could work in the boarding house or perhaps as a seamstress. The thought of returning to Boston in defeat, admitting failure to those relatives who had already looked down on her desperate choice, made her stomach turn. The bell above the mercantile door chimed, and a deep voice called out, "Dorothy, I need to pick up those supplies I ordered." "In here, Lucas," Dorothy called back. "But we have a situation." The man who appeared in the doorway had to duck slightly to avoid hitting his head on the frame. He was tall and lean, with sun-weathered skin that spoke of years outdoors and dark hair that curled slightly at his collar. His clothes were working ranch wear, worn but clean, and he carried himself with an easy confidence that suggested a man comfortable in his own skin. When his eyes met Lily's, she felt an unexpected jolt, something electric that made her forget her circumstances for just a moment. Lucas Young had been coming to White Pine for supplies every month for the past 5 years, ever since he had saved enough to buy a small spread northeast of town. At 28, he had built a modest but successful operation raising horses, supplementing his income by breaking and training animals for other ranchers. He prided itself on his independence, having worked as a ranch hand since he was 15 to escape an abusive stepfather in Texas. The freedom of having his own land, answering to no one, had been everything he had dreamed of. "This is Miss Lily Hammond," Dorothy explained. "She came to marry Gerald Morrison." Lucas's expression shifted to understanding, then sympathy. "I heard about Gerald. I'm real sorry, madam." "She needs help finding a situation," Dorothy continued, and Lucas could hear the hope in her voice, the unspoken request. Dorothy and her husband Robert were good people who often tried to help those down on their luck, even when their own resources were stretched thin. Lily lifted her chin, determined not to appear as desperate as she felt. "I'm capable of work. I can read and write, I can keep accounts, I know something of cooking and household management." Lucas studied her for a long moment, and she met his gaze directly, refusing to look away. There was intelligence in those blue eyes and pride, and something fiercer that suggested this was not a woman who would crumble easily. Her dress was simple but well made, speaking of someone who had known better circumstances. She was pretty, though currently covered in trail dust and clearly exhausted, with honey-colored hair escaping from its pins and a determined set to her jaw. "I might have something," he heard himself say, even though every practical bone in his body was screaming that this was a terrible idea. "Not what you were expecting, and the pay wouldn't be much, but I need help at my place." Dorothy's eyebrows rose. Lucas Young was known as a solitary man, friendly enough when he came to town but content with his own company. His ranch was small, just him and occasionally a hired hand during busy seasons. "What kind of help?" Lily asked carefully. "I've been training horses for John Garrett's ranch, but he wants me to take on more, which means I need someone to handle the household side so I can focus on the work. Cooking, keeping the place from falling down around my ears, maybe helping with the account books. It's not fancy. The house is small, 2 rooms. You'd have your own space and I'd pay you a fair wage plus room and board." It was a risk, Lucas knew. A single woman living on his ranch would cause talk, might damage both their reputations. But there was something about the way she held herself that made him want to help, and truth be told, he could use the assistance. He had been living on hardtack and burnt stew for too long, and his paperwork was a disaster. "I can't go back to Boston," Lily said quietly. "I have nothing to return to. If you're making this offer out of pity, I'd rather you be honest now." "I need the help," Lucas said simply. "And you need the work. We'd be doing each other a favor." Dorothy was watching them both with interest, her merchant's eye reading the undercurrents in the room. "It would be proper for you to have a chaperone, Lily. Perhaps I could speak to Mrs. Sullivan about checking in regularly." "I'm not concerned with what people think," Lily said, though she knew she should be. Her reputation was already compromised by coming west as a mail-order bride, But I need to know this is a legitimate offer of employment, Mr. Young. Lucas, he corrected. And yes, it's legitimate. I won't lie, people will talk. But if you can handle that, I could use your help starting as soon as you're willing. The alternative was to try to find work in White Pine with no references and dwindling funds, hoping something better would turn up. At least on a ranch, she would have shelter and food, time to figure out her next step. And there was something about this tall cowboy with his direct gaze and straightforward manner that made her think he was telling the truth about his intentions. "When would you want me to start?" she asked. "I need to pick up supplies today. We could head out tomorrow morning if you're ready. It's about a 3-hour ride northeast." Lily thought of her mother, dead these 10 years, who had always told her that sometimes you had to take a leap of faith when all the safe paths had closed. "All right." "Tomorrow morning." Lucas nodded, something that might have been relief crossing his features. "I'll come by the boarding house at first light. Bring what you can carry. I'll send someone for the rest once you're settled." After he left to gather his supplies, Dorothy touched Lily's arm gently. "Lucas Young is a good man. Quiet, keeps to himself but honest. I wouldn't have let you go if I thought otherwise." "I hope you're right," Lily said, watching through the window as Lucas loaded bags into a wagon, "because I just agreed to ride off into the wilderness with a complete stranger." That night, in the small room Mrs. Sullivan provided at the boarding house, Lily lay awake staring at the ceiling. The bed was lumpy, and she could hear raucous laughter from the saloon down the street, along with the occasional shout and the sound of breaking glass. This was nothing like Boston, with its ordered streets and predictable social structures. Here, it seemed, chaos and possibility existed in equal measure. She thought about Gerald Morrison, a man she had never met, whose death had set her life spinning in an unexpected direction. She tried to feel something, grief or disappointment, but all she felt was a strange sense of liberation mixed with terror. The future she had resigned herself to was gone, and now she was stepping into complete uncertainty. Lucas Young. The name rolled through her mind. He had been handsome in a rough-edged way, nothing like the refined men she had known in Boston. There had been strength in his hands, calluses earned through hard work, and an easiness in his movements that suggested capability and confidence. She wondered what his ranch was like, what kind of man lived alone on the edge of the wilderness training horses. Sleep finally came near dawn, and she woke to knocking on her door. Mrs. Sullivan's voice called out that Mr. Young was downstairs. Lily dressed quickly in her most practical dress, a dark blue cotton that would show dirt less than her other options, and tied her hair back in a simple braid. Looking in the small mirror, she barely recognized herself. The refined Boston lady was disappearing, replaced by someone harder, more capable of surviving in this harsh land. Lucas was waiting with the wagon, her trunk already loaded. In the early morning light, he looked different, more handsome than she remembered, with the sun catching bronze highlights in his dark hair. He helped her up onto the seat with easy strength, and then they were rolling out of White Pine, leaving behind the only familiar thing in this strange new world. For the first hour, they rode in silence. The landscape was unlike anything Lily had ever seen, vast and empty in a way that was both terrifying and magnificent. Rolling hills covered with sagebrush stretched in every direction, punctuated by rocky outcroppings and distant mountains. The sky was enormous, a blue so deep it seemed to go on forever. "It takes some getting used to," Lucas said finally, glancing at her. "The openness." "It's beautiful," Lily said honestly. "Frightening, but beautiful. You scared?" He asked, and there was no judgment in the question, just curiosity. "Yes," she admitted. "Of a lot of things. But going back east scared me more. Lucas nodded as if he understood. I came out here 5 years ago from Texas. Had about $50 and a mean streak from too many years taking orders and worse from a man who thought his fists solved everything. Figured I'd rather die free than live as someone's whipping boy. The honesty of the statement surprised her. Is that why you live alone? Partially. Also, I like the quiet. Horses make more sense to me than most people. He smiled slightly. Though I'll admit I'm not much of a cook, so having someone who can manage more than burnt beans would be welcome. I can cook, Lily assured him. My mother taught me. She was from a good family but married my father against their wishes because she loved him. We didn't have much money, but we had a happy home until she got sick. The memory still ached, even after all these years. And your father died last year. Heart gave out. He never really recovered after my mother passed. She paused, then added quietly, I had some relatives who might have helped me, but they made it clear I would be tolerated, not welcomed. So when I saw the advertisement for a mail-order bride, it seemed like a chance to build something new. That took courage, Lucas said. Or desperation, Lily replied with a bitter laugh. Sometimes those are the same thing. The ranch appeared just before noon, a cluster of buildings nestled in a valley with a stream running through it. The house was small, as Lucas had warned, built of rough-hewn logs with a stone chimney. Nearby was a barn, several corrals, and what looked like a bunkhouse. It was modest but well-maintained, and there was something appealing about its simplicity. Lucas helped her down and carried her trunk into the house. The interior was dim and cluttered, with dishes piled in a basin and clothes draped over chairs. One large room served as kitchen and living area, with a potbelly stove, a rough wooden table, and a few pieces of mismatched furniture. A door led to what she assumed was the bedroom. That's my room, Lucas confirmed, following her gaze. I set up a cot in the other building for myself. You'll have privacy here. You don't have to do that, Lily protested. I can manage in the bunkhouse. You're not sleeping in the bunkhouse, Lucas said firmly. This is more appropriate. Lily looked around the cluttered space and rolled up her sleeves. All right then. I might as well earn my keep. Is there water for washing? Pumps out back. And there's a root cellar with some provisions, though I'll admit they're running low. Lucas looked almost embarrassed. I've been meaning to organize things better. I'll figure it out, Lily said with more confidence than she felt. You go do whatever it is you do with horses, and I'll see what I can do here. Lucas lingered for a moment as if wanting to say something more, then nodded and headed out. Through the window, Lily watched him walk to one of the corrals where several horses were waiting. His movements were fluid and purposeful, and even from a distance, she could see the animals responding to him, ears pricked forward with interest rather than fear. She turned her attention to the overwhelming task of making the space livable. The dishes came first, then sweeping and organizing. She found the root cellar stocked with potatoes, onions, some dried meat, and a few canned goods. Not much to work with, but she had made do with less. By mid-afternoon, the house was transformed. The dishes were clean and put away, the floor swept, the furniture arranged more sensibly. She had even found sheets and made up the bed properly, airing out the musty quilts. For dinner, she made a simple stew with the dried meat, potatoes, and onions, adding wild herbs she found growing near the stream. As the sun began to set, Lucas came in, stopping short at the doorway. You've been busy, he said, looking around in amazement. Just doing what you hired me for, Lily replied, ladling stew into 2 bowls. I hope this is edible. They sat at the table together, and Lucas took his first bite. His expression transformed into something close to bliss. This is the best meal I've had in months. Lily smiled despite herself. then your standards are dangerously low. Over dinner, they talked more easily than she would have expected. Lucas described his work, the horses he was training, the quirks of different animals. He spoke about his dream of building a reputation as the best horse trainer in the territory, expanding his operation to include breeding. His face became animated when he talked about it, his usual reserve falling away. Lily found herself telling him about Boston, about her father's bookshop that had failed after her mother's death, about the weight of others' expectations, and the relief of escaping them even under such desperate circumstances. It felt strange to be so honest with someone she barely knew, but something about the isolation of the ranch, the fact that they were the only two people for miles, seemed to strip away the usual social pretenses. "I said I'm not what you ordered," Lily said suddenly, thinking of the advertisement Lucas hadn't placed, the arrangement that had never materialized. Lucas looked at her, his dark eyes serious in the lamplight. "You're better than I dreamed." The words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning neither was quite ready to acknowledge. Lily felt heat rise in her cheeks, and Lucas looked away first, clearing his throat. "I mean in terms of help," he added awkwardly. "Around the place." "Of course," Lily said quickly, though her heart was beating faster than it should. That night, lying in Lucas's bed that still smelled faintly of him, a mixture of leather and sage and something uniquely masculine, Lily stared at the ceiling and wondered what she had gotten herself into. This was supposed to be a temporary arrangement, a way to earn enough money to figure out her next step. But something about Lucas Young and his quiet ranch had already begun to work its way under her skin. The days fell into a rhythm. Lily woke early to prepare breakfast, often watching through the window as Lucas worked with the horses in the cool morning air. He had a gift for it, she realized, a patience and understanding that allowed him to communicate with animals that had been mistreated or were naturally fearful. She would see him standing perfectly still in a corral, waiting for a horse to approach him, speaking in a low voice that carried a gentle authority. After breakfast, she would clean and organize, gradually imposing order on the chaos Lucas had been living in. She found account books that had been neglected and spent afternoons carefully recording expenses and income, organizing the papers into a system that made sense. Lucas would come in covered in dust and sweat, and his face would light up when he saw what she had accomplished. The evenings were the best part. They would share dinner, then sit on the porch as the sun set, talking about everything and nothing. Lucas told her stories about his years as a ranch hand, the characters he had worked with, the places he had seen across Texas and New Mexico before coming to Nevada. Lily shared memories of Boston, the books she had loved, the small rebellions against the strictures of proper society. One evening, about 2 weeks after her arrival, Lucas was working with a particularly difficult horse, a mare that had been beaten by a previous owner and now trusted no one. Lily had finished her work and wandered out to watch, leaning against the corral fence. The mare was beautiful, a dappled gray with intelligent eyes, but she flinched and reared every time Lucas approached. "Easy, girl," Lucas murmured, keeping his movements slow and non-threatening. "Nobody's going to hurt you here." It took nearly an hour, but finally, the mare allowed him to touch her neck. Lily could see the tension drain from the animal's body as Lucas stroked her, continuing his low, soothing monologue. When he finally led her back to the barn, there was satisfaction in his expression. "She's coming around," he said to Lily. "You're remarkable with them," Lily observed. "I've never seen anything like it." Lucas shrugged, embarrassed by the praise. "They just need someone to listen." Most people approach horses with force, trying to dominate them, but they respond better to understanding. "Is that how you approach everything?" Lily asked. He looked at her, and something passed between them, an acknowledgement of the growing connection neither had put into words. "I try," he said quietly. That night, a storm rolled in, violent and sudden as summer storms in Nevada often were. Thunder shook the small house, and lightning illuminated the landscape in stark flashes. Lily lay in bed, trying not to be frightened by the ferocity of it, so different from the gentler rains of Boston. When she heard a crash, she sat up, heart pounding. Lucas appeared in the doorway, soaked through. "Sorry, didn't mean to scare you. The barn door came loose. I had to secure it." "You're dripping everywhere," Lily said, grabbing a towel and handing it to him without thinking. In the lamplight, with his wet shirt clinging to his frame, she was suddenly very aware of him as a man, of the way his muscles moved as he dried his face and arms, of the proximity of his body to hers. "Thanks," Lucas said, and his voice sounded rougher than usual. "You all right? These storms can be intense." "I'm fine," Lily assured him, though her voice came out breathier than she intended. "Just not used to them." They stood there for a moment, too close, the air charged with something that had nothing to do with the storm outside. Lucas took a step back, breaking the spell. "I should let you sleep," he said. "Long day tomorrow. John Garrett's coming by to look at the horses." After he left, Lily lay back down, but sleep was impossible. She was falling for him, she realized, and probably had been from that first moment in Dorothy's mercantile when their eyes had met. It was foolish and dangerous, and exactly the kind of emotional risk she had been trying to avoid by choosing the practical route of a mail-order marriage. But emotions, she was learning, did not follow practical plans. John Garrett arrived the next afternoon. A wealthy rancher whose spread south of White Pine was one of the largest in the territory. He was in his 50s, with the bearing of a man used to getting his way and the wealth to make it happen. Lucas led him through the corrals, showing off the horses he had trained. "You've done well with them," Garrett acknowledged. "Especially that bay gelding. He was half wild when I brought him to you." From the house, Lily watched the interaction, noting the way Lucas's demeanor changed around the older man, becoming more deferential. It reminded her that despite his independence, Lucas still depended on men like Garrett for his livelihood. Garrett's eyes found her, and his expression became speculative. "Got yourself a woman young. Miss Hammond is my housekeeper," Lucas said firmly. "She's helping with the domestic side while I focus on training." "Housekeeper," Garrett repeated with a knowing smirk that made Lily's skin crawl. "Well, she's easy on the eyes, I'll give you that, though you might want to consider the talk it causes, a single woman living out here with you." "Miss Hammond's reputation is her own business," Lucas said, his voice cooling. "As is mine." Garrett held up his hands. "No offense intended. Just saying people talk. Might be simpler if you made it official, if you know what I mean." After Garrett left, Lucas was quieter than usual. Over dinner, Lily finally asked what was bothering him. "Garrett's right," Lucas said reluctantly. "You living here, it reflects on both of us. I didn't think it through properly when I offered you the job." Lily set down her fork. "Are you asking me to leave?" "No," Lucas said quickly. "Hell no, I wish there was a way to make it proper without." He trailed off, looking frustrated. "Without what? Marrying me?" Lily tried to keep her tone light, but the words came out sharper than intended. Lucas met her eyes. Would that be so terrible? The question hung between them, enormous and terrifying. Lily's heart was racing. "Is that a proposal?" "I don't know," Lucas admitted. "Maybe. I know we haven't known each other long, but I've enjoyed these past weeks more than I've enjoyed anything in years. You're smart and capable, and you make me laugh. And if I'm being honest, I think about you more than I probably should." Lily felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff, about to jump. "I think about you too," she confessed. But Lucas, I came here to marry one stranger out of desperation. I don't want to marry another stranger for the same reason, even if I've come to care for you. I want something real." "So do I," Lucas said, standing and moving around the table to where she sat. "I'm not asking out of obligation or to solve a reputation problem. I'm asking because these weeks with you have shown me what I've been missing. I'm asking because when I work with the horses, I find myself thinking about what you're doing, wondering what you'll think of something I've accomplished. I'm asking because when I come in at the end of the day, seeing you here makes this house feel like a home instead of just a place I sleep." Lily stood facing him. "I'm afraid," she whispered. "I'm afraid of making another mistake, of not being enough." Lucas reached out and cupped her face gently, his calloused thumb brushing across her cheekbone. "You're enough," he said. "More than enough. But if you're not ready, I understand. You can stay here as long as you need, regardless. No pressure." Looking into his eyes, Lily saw sincerity and vulnerability, and something that looked like the same emotion swelling in her own chest. She had come west expecting practicality and safety, and instead, she had found passion and risk and something that felt like it might be love. "Ask me properly," she said. Lucas took both her hands in his, and she could feel them trembling slightly. "Lily Hammond, I know I'm not fancy or educated, and this ranch is small and will probably never be grand. But I swear I'll work every day to make you happy, to give you a good life. Will you marry me?" "Yes," Lily said, the word coming out on a breath. "Yes, I'll marry you." Lucas pulled her into his arms, and Lily melted against him, feeling the solid strength of his body, the way he held her like she was something precious. When he pulled back to look at her face, his eyes were dark with emotion. "Can I kiss you?" he asked, and the gentleness of the question, the respect in it, made her heart swell. "Please," she whispered. His lips met hers, gentle at first, almost tentative, and then deepening as she responded. Lily had been kissed before, chased proper kisses from Boston suitors, but nothing like this. This was heat and hunger and the sense of coming home all at once. Lucas's hand came up to tangle in her hair, and she pressed closer, wanting to eliminate any space between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lucas rested his forehead against hers. "We'll do this right," he said. "Go into town tomorrow, talk to the preacher. I want everyone to know you're my wife." Lily smiled, feeling happiness bubble up inside her like champagne. "Tomorrow, then." That night, they sat on the porch until late, Lucas's arm around her shoulders, talking about the future. They would need to expand the house eventually, Lucas said, add another room or two. He had plans for the ranch, ideas about breeding horses rather than just training them, building something substantial they could pass on. Lily shared her own dreams tentatively, about maybe having a small school for the scattered ranch children in the area, about creating a real home filled with love and laughter. The next morning, they rode into White Pine together. Dorothy's face lit up when they entered the mercantile and explained their news. "I knew it," she crowed. "I knew from the moment I saw you two together. Oh, this is wonderful news." The preacher, Reverend Matthews, was a practical man who had seen all manner of situations on the frontier. He agreed to marry them that afternoon, with Dorothy and her husband Robert serving as witnesses. The ceremony was simple, held in the small church that also served as the schoolhouse and community meeting place. Lily wore her best dress, the pale green one she had brought for meeting Gerald Morrison, and Lucas had cleaned up, his dark hair slicked back and his jaw freshly shaved. As they spoke their vows, Lily felt the strangeness of the moment. 3 weeks ago, she had been a desperate woman with no prospects. Now she was marrying a man she had come to love with startling speed, promising to build a life in a harsh and beautiful land. When Lucas slipped a simple gold band on her finger, one he had bought that morning from the mercantile's limited selection, she felt tears prick her eyes. "You may kiss your bride," Reverend Matthews intoned, and Lucas did, thoroughly enough to make Dorothy laugh with delight. They had a small celebration at the mercantile, Dorothy insisting on breaking out a bottle of wine she had been saving. Other townspeople stopped by, curious about the quick wedding. Some looked disapproving, clearly thinking the marriage was rushed to cover impropriety, but most were friendly enough. The community on the frontier was too small to indulge in excessive judgment. As the sun began to set, Lucas and Lily headed back to the ranch, now officially married. The ride seemed shorter than usual, both of them quiet but holding hands across the wagon seat. When they arrived, Lucas helped her down, but instead of heading inside, he swept her up into his arms. "Got to carry you over the threshold properly," he said with a grin that transformed his usually serious face. Lily laughed, wrapping her arms around his neck. "You're taking this husband business seriously." "Very seriously," Lucas assured her, carrying her into the house and setting her down gently. The laughter faded as they looked at each other, both suddenly aware that they were alone, married, and the night stretched ahead of them. "Lily," Lucas said softly, "I know this has all happened fast. If you need time, if you're not ready for everything that being married means, I can wait. I'll sleep in the bunkhouse until you're comfortable." It was the offer of a gentleman, and it made Lily love him even more. But she had spent too much of her life being careful, being proper, following the rules of a society that had ultimately abandoned her. Standing in this rough house on the edge of the wilderness with this good man who looked at her like she hung the moon, she felt certain. "I don't want you to sleep in the bunkhouse," she said, reaching up to touch his face. "I want you here with me. I want everything that being married means." The kiss that followed was different from their first, laden with promise and permission. Lucas's hands spanned her waist, pulling her close, and Lily let herself sink into the sensation, the rightness of it. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark with desire. "Are you sure?" he asked one more time. "I've never been more sure of anything," Lily replied, and meant it. What followed was tender and passionate, awkward in moments as they learned each other, but perfect in its intimacy. Lucas was gentle, attentive to her responses, making sure she was with him every step. Afterward, lying tangled together in the bed that had been his alone just hours before, Lily felt a contentment she had never known. This was what she had been missing in her practical plans for marriage to Gerald Morrison. This connection, this passion, this sense of being truly known and cherished. "I love you," Lucas murmured against her hair. "I should have said it before, but I love you." "I love you too," Lily replied, the words feeling both momentous and natural. "I think I have since that first day, though I didn't know it yet." In the weeks that followed, they settled into married life with surprising ease. The awkwardness faded as they learned each other's rhythms and preferences. Lily discovered that Lucas was a thoughtful partner, always considering her needs, often bringing her wildflowers he found on his rides, or spending his evenings helping her with the heavier household tasks. Lucas, in turn, marveled at how Lily had transformed not just his house but his entire life, bringing order and warmth and laughter to what had been a solitary existence. The ranch itself began to flourish under their combined efforts. With the household running smoothly, Lucas could take on more training contracts. Word spread about his skill with difficult horses, and ranchers from across the territory began bringing him their problems. Lily proved invaluable with the business side, managing the accounts, negotiating fair prices, and even handling correspondence with potential clients. Her education and business sense, honed by helping her father in his bookshop, translated well to ranch management. One afternoon in early October, about 2 months after their marriage, a stranger rode up to the ranch. He was well-dressed, with the bearing of someone from back east, and he looked distinctly uncomfortable on horseback. "Mr. Young," he called out, "I'm looking for a Mrs. Lily Young, formerly Hammond." Lily emerged from the house, wiping her hands on her apron. "I'm Lily Young. Can I help you?" The man dismounted awkwardly. "My name is Herbert Preston. I'm an attorney from Boston. I've been trying to track you down for several weeks." A cold sense of dread filled Lily's stomach. "Is something wrong?" "Quite the opposite," Preston said, opening his saddlebag and extracting some papers. "I've been trying to inform you that your great-aunt Beatrice Hammond passed away 4 months ago. She left you a substantial inheritance." Lily stared at him in shock. "Aunt Beatrice? But we never met. She was one of the relatives who refused to help me after my father died." "Yes, well," Preston said uncomfortably, "it seems she had regrets about that. Her will specifically mentions her remorse at how you were treated by the family. She left you $10,000 and her house in Boston." The number was staggering. $10,000 was more money than Lily had ever imagined having. It was enough to transform their ranch, to build a real house, to expand the operation significantly. It was also enough to return to Boston, to reclaim the life of comfort and society she had left behind. Lucas had come up behind her, and she felt his solid presence at her back. Preston was watching them both, clearly curious about the rough cowboy and the educated woman who seemed unlikely partners. "What do you want to do?" Lucas asked quietly, and there was something guarded in his voice that made her heart ache. Lily turned to look at him. "What do you mean?" "It's your money," Lucas said. "If you want to go back to Boston, I'd understand. You could have the life you were meant for." The words hung between them, and Lily saw the fear in his eyes, the certainty that she would choose wealth and civilization over their rough life on the ranch. It made her angry and sad all at once that he could doubt what they had built together. "The life I was meant for is here," she said firmly. "With you. This is my home now." Relief flooded Lucas's face, so evident that Preston looked away, embarrassed to witness such raw emotion. "Mr. Preston," Lily continued, turning back to the attorney, "please arrange to sell the Boston property. Have the proceeds and the inheritance transferred to the Bank of Nevada in Carson City. We'll have use for it here." After Preston left, promising to handle everything, Lucas pulled Lily into his arms. "You could have had everything back," he said. "Comfort, society, security." "I have everything I want," Lily replied. "Did you really think I would leave?" "I worried," Lucas admitted. "You came from that world. This ranch, we're pretty rough compared to what you knew." Lily pulled back to look at him seriously. "Lucas Young, I need you to understand something. I didn't choose you because I had no other options. I didn't marry you to solve a problem. I married you because you're the best man I've ever known, because you make me laugh and make me think and make me feel alive. This ranch is more of a home than anywhere I ever lived in Boston because you're here. So don't you dare think I'm staying because I have nowhere else to go. I'm staying because this is where I belong." The kiss that followed was deep and passionate, a reaffirmation of everything they had promised each other. When they finally broke apart, Lucas was grinning. "Well then, Mrs. Young, what do you say we use some of that inheritance to build something really special here?" Over the winter, they made plans. Lucas wanted to expand the corrals and build a proper breeding barn. Lily designed a larger house, one with multiple bedrooms, a real kitchen, and even a small library. They hired a carpenter from White Pine and several laborers, and through the cold months, the ranch slowly transformed. The work was hard but satisfying. Lily found herself learning aspects of ranch management she had never imagined, helping Lucas with the horses, riding out to check on the fences, even assisting with foaling when spring came and their first mare gave birth. She grew strong and tanned, her hands developing their own calluses to match Lucas's. The new house was completed by May of 1879, and it was beautiful in its simplicity, solid logs and stone, built to last. They had a proper bedroom with a real bed frame Lucas had crafted himself, a kitchen with a cast iron stove that made cooking a pleasure, and a living area with enough space to entertain the friends they had made in the territory. The small library was Lily's favorite room, shelves Lucas had built waiting to be filled with books she ordered from San Francisco. Dorothy and Robert came for dinner to celebrate the house's completion, along with several other families from the area. As Lily looked around at the gathering, at Lucas laughing with one of the neighboring ranchers, at the warm glow of lamplight filling their home, she felt a contentment so profound it brought tears to her eyes. "You've built something wonderful here," Dorothy said, noticing her expression. "Both of you. I never imagined I could be this happy," Lily confessed. "When I stepped off that stagecoach, I was so lost. And now you're found," Dorothy said simply. That night, after everyone had left and they were cleaning up together, Lucas pulled Lily into a dance, humming a tune under his breath. They swayed together in the kitchen, surrounded by dirty dishes and the debris of celebration, and it felt more romantic than any fancy ballroom. "Thank you," Lucas said. "For what?" "For seeing something in me worth staying for building this with me, for being my partner in everything." Lily rose on her toes to kiss him. "Thank you for being the man you are, for giving me a home and a purpose and love." By the fall of 1879, the ranch was thriving. Lucas's reputation had spread, and they had more business than they could handle. They hired 2 permanent hands, young men who lived in the expanded bunkhouse and helped with the daily operations. The breeding program was showing promise, with several foals that would fetch good prices once they were trained. It was in October, on the anniversary of the attorney's visit, that Lily realized she had missed her monthly courses. She waited another week to be sure, then sought out Dorothy in town, needing another woman's confirmation of what she suspected. "Oh, my dear," Dorothy said, her face lighting up. "What wonderful news! Have you told Lucas?" "Not yet. I wanted to be certain." Lily felt a mixture of joy and terror. "I'm frightened, Dorothy. My mother died when I was young and I never had her guidance for this." Dorothy took her hands. "You have me and Mrs. Sullivan and the other women in the area. You won't go through this alone, and Lucas will be over the moon." That evening after dinner, Lily asked Lucas to sit with her on the porch. The autumn air was crisp and the stars were brilliant overhead. "I have something to tell you," she began, suddenly nervous. Lucas looked concerned. "What is it? Is something wrong?" "No, nothing's wrong." Quite the opposite. She took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. "We're going to have a baby, next spring, I think." The expression that crossed Lucas's face was pure wonder. "A baby? Really, really?" Lily confirmed, laughing at his stunned expression. "Are you happy?" "Happy." Lucas pulled her into his arms, holding her with a gentleness that suggested she was made of glass. "Lily, I'm terrified and thrilled and about a dozen other things all at once. A baby. Our baby." "You're going to be a wonderful father," Lily said with certainty. "If you can be as patient with our child as you are with those wild horses, we'll be fine." The winter passed slowly, Lily's body changing as new life grew within her. Lucas became almost comically protective, insisting she rest more, taking over tasks she had always handled. They spent long evenings planning for the baby, discussing names, imagining the future. Lucas built a cradle with his own hands, carving intricate designs into the wood with painstaking care. When the labor began in late April of 1880, it was Dorothy who came to help, along with Mrs. Sullivan, who had experience as a midwife. Lucas paced outside, forbidden from the birthing room, his worry evident to the ranch hands who tried to distract him with work. The labor was long and difficult, more painful than Lily could have imagined. There were moments when she was certain she would not survive, when the pain seemed endless. But Dorothy held her hand and encouraged her, and Mrs. Sullivan's competent guidance saw her through the worst of it. When the baby finally emerged, wailing lustily, Mrs. Sullivan announced, "It's a boy." Lily felt tears streaming down her face as they placed the infant on her chest. He was red and wrinkled and absolutely perfect, with a shock of dark hair that promised to match his father's. "Let his father in," she said weakly. Lucas entered tentatively, his eyes widening when he saw Lily holding their son. He crossed to the bed in 3 long strides, sitting carefully on the edge. "A boy," Lily said. "We have a son." Lucas reached out a trembling finger to touch the baby's tiny hand, and the infant's fingers curled around it reflexively. The expression on Lucas's face was one of complete transformation, awe and love and fierce protectiveness all at once. "He's perfect," Lucas whispered. "You're both perfect." They named him Thomas, after Lily's father, with the middle name James for no one in particular, just because they liked it. Thomas James Young, born April 28, 1880 at the Young Ranch in White Pine, Nevada. He was healthy and strong, and from the beginning, he had his father's determined nature. The months that followed were exhausting and wonderful. Lily had never been so tired in her life, but watching Lucas with their son made every sleepless night worthwhile. He was a natural father, patient and gentle, singing to Thomas in his low voice, walking him around the ranch when he was fussy. The rough cowboy who had lived alone for so long transformed into a devoted family man. By Thomas's first birthday, the ranch had expanded further. They had acquired more land, built additional corrals, and their horse breeding program was gaining recognition across Nevada and into California. Lily had started a small school, just 3 mornings a week, for the scattered children of nearby ranches, fulfilling the dream she had mentioned on their first night together. Lucas built a small schoolhouse on their property, and 6 children came regularly to learn reading, writing, and arithmetic. One evening in the summer of 1881, after they had put Thomas to bed, and were sitting on the porch as had become their habit, Lily leaned against Lucas's shoulder. "Do you ever think about how different things might have been?" she asked. "If Gerald Morrison had lived, if we had never met." Lucas was quiet for a moment. "Sometimes, and it terrifies me, the thought of you married to someone else, of living my whole life without knowing you existed." "I said I wasn't what you ordered," Lily reminded him, thinking back to that overwhelming day when her world had seemed to end. Lucas turned to face her, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. "And I meant it when I said you were better than I dreamed. I wasn't looking for love, Lily. I thought I was fine alone, but you showed me what I was missing. You took my house and made it a home. You took my solitary life and filled it with laughter and purpose, and more happiness than I knew was possible." "I love you," Lily said, the words as true as the first time she had spoken them. "I love the life we've built, the family we've made." "I love you too," Lucas replied, "and I'm grateful every single day that fate brought you to my door." They sat together as the sun set, painting the Nevada sky in shades of orange and pink and purple, watching the land they had claimed and made their own. Inside, their son slept peacefully. Around them, the ranch thrived. And between them, the love that had started with desperation and unexpected kindness had grown into something deep and enduring. The years that followed were good ones. Thomas grew into a curious, energetic boy who followed his father everywhere, learning about horses and ranching from the time he could walk. In 1883, Lily gave birth to a daughter they named Catherine, and 2 years after that, another son they called William. The house that had seemed so spacious when they built, it began to feel cozy with the sounds of children. Lucas's reputation as a horse trainer and breeder grew beyond Nevada. Buyers came from as far as Colorado and Oregon to purchase his animals. The ranch prospered, allowing them to help others in the community when times were hard, to invest in White Pine's growth, to provide employment for families who needed it. Lily's school expanded as more families settled in the area. By 1885, they had built a proper schoolhouse in White Pine itself, and Lily was instrumental in hiring a full-time teacher, though she still taught occasionally and served on the school board. Her inheritance, wisely managed and invested, had grown, providing security for their family and allowing them to contribute to the community's development. On their 10th wedding anniversary in 1889, Lucas surprised Lily with a trip to San Francisco. It was the first time they had left the ranch for more than a day trip to Carson City, and Lily was excited and nervous about returning to civilization. Dorothy and Robert agreed to watch the children, and they took the train west, marveling at how quickly the world was changing. San Francisco was overwhelming after years in White Pine, all noise and crowds and endless buildings. But it was also exciting, and they enjoyed playing tourists, visiting theaters and restaurants, shopping in stores that carried goods from around the world. Lucas insisted on buying Lily an elaborate dress, something impractical and beautiful that she would have no occasion to wear on the ranch, but that he said matched her eyes. On their last evening, walking along the waterfront as the sun set over the Pacific, Lily reflected on how far they had come. "Do you ever miss Boston?" Lucas asked, perhaps reading her thoughts. "Sometimes I miss the idea of it," Lily admitted. "The culture, the ease of city life, but not enough to trade what we have. Do you ever regret offering me that job?" Lucas stopped walking, turning to face her with an intensity that still made her heart race after 10 years of marriage. "Never. Not for a single moment. You're the best decision I ever made, Lily Young." They kissed as the sun dipped below the horizon. Two people who had found each other through chance and desperation, and had built something lasting through love and commitment. Returning to White Pine felt like coming home. The children rushed to greet them, Thomas at 11 now tall and gangly, Catherine a whirlwind of energy at 6, and William toddling along behind at 4. The ranch looked beautiful in the late summer light, prosperous and welcoming. "This is what matters," Lily said to Lucas as they stood on their porch that evening, watching their children play in the yard. "All of this. The family, the life we've built together. Over the years, they faced challenges as all families do. There were hard winters when they lost livestock, droughts that tested their resources, illness that frightened them. In 1892, Thomas broke his arm falling from a horse, and Lily aged 10 years in the hours waiting for the doctor to set it properly. Lucas's back began to ache from years of hard work, though he never complained, and Lily's hair started showing threads of silver, but there were far more joys than sorrows. Thomas showed his father's gift with horses, and by 15 was helping train the more difficult animals. Catherine proved to be a natural teacher, often helping the younger students in the White Pine School. William was quieter than his siblings, but demonstrated a head for numbers that suggested he would manage the business side of the ranch someday. In 1895, the family celebrated the completion of their 20th year on the ranch. They threw a large party, inviting everyone from White Pine and the surrounding ranches. Dorothy and Robert were there, grayer but still running their mercantile. The preacher who had married Lucas and Lily blessed their continued union. Neighbors who had become dear friends over the years shared food and stories and laughter. As the party wound down, Lucas pulled Lily aside to the same spot where he had proposed all those years ago. "I have something for you," he said, pulling out a small box. Inside was a delicate gold necklace with a pendant shaped like a horse. It was beautiful, clearly expensive, and so thoughtfully chosen that Lily felt tears prick her eyes. "It's to remind you," Lucas said as he fastened it around her neck, "of where we started, of that day you arrived and changed everything, of the horses that brought us together and built this life." "I don't need a reminder," Lily said, touching the pendant gently, "but I love it. And I love you, more now than even at the beginning, which I wouldn't have thought possible." "That's the thing about love," Lucas replied, pulling her close. "When it's real, it just keeps growing." The turn of the century brought changes to White Pine and the territory. Nevada was no longer the wild frontier it had been when Lily first arrived. There were railroads and telegraph lines, towns with proper streets, and even some electricity. The ranch adapted with the times, incorporating new technologies while maintaining the core values that had built it. Thomas married in 1899, a sweet girl named Alina from a neighboring ranch. They built a house on the young property, expanding the family operation. Catherine went to San Francisco to train as a teacher, returning 2 years later with a degree in modern teaching methods she implemented in the White Pine School. William showed interest in veterinary medicine, corresponding with professors back east about formal training. In 1903, Lucas and Lily became grandparents when Thomas and Alina had a daughter. Holding the infant, Lily thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. From desperate mail-order bride to successful rancher's wife to grandmother, each stage had brought unexpected blessings. "What are you thinking about?" Lucas asked, watching her rock the baby. "How Gerald Morrison's death seemed like the end of everything," Lily said quietly. "How terrified I was standing in Dorothy's store, realizing I was completely alone in a strange land. And how that moment, awful as it was, led to everything good in my life." Lucas sat beside her, his arm around her shoulders, their granddaughter sleeping peacefully between them. "I think about that sometimes too. How close I came to not offering you that job, thinking it was too complicated, too risky. How different life would be if I had kept my mouth shut." "We were lucky," Lily said. "We were," Lucas agreed. "But we also worked for this, built it together day by day, year by year." As they grew older, Lucas and Lily gradually stepped back from the daily operations of the ranch, letting Thomas take over more of the management. It was strange at first, having less to do, but it also allowed them time they had never had before. They traveled more, visiting Catherine in San Francisco, taking a memorable trip to see William when he attended veterinary school in Colorado. But they always returned to White Pine, to the ranch that had been their home for decades. The house had been expanded multiple times to accommodate visiting children and grandchildren. The barns and corrals were in excellent condition, testament to years of careful maintenance. The land itself seemed to embrace them, this patch of Nevada they had claimed and nurtured. In 1908, on the 30th anniversary of their marriage, their children organized another celebration. The party was even larger than the 20th, with grandchildren running everywhere and friends from across the territory. Lily wore the impractical dress Lucas had bought her in San Francisco all those years ago, and it still fit, though her figure had softened with age and motherhood. Lucas, now 58, had silver threading through his dark hair and lines etched deep around his eyes from years of squinting into the sun. But he was still strong, still capable, still the man who had offered kindness to a desperate stranger and changed both their lives. During the party, someone asked them to tell the story of how they met. It had become something of a legend in the area, the mail-order bride whose groom died before she arrived, and the cowboy who gave her a job that turned into a marriage. "I said I wasn't what he ordered," Lily told the gathered crowd, her hand in Lucas's. "And I said she was better than I dreamed," Lucas finished, pulling her close. "And I've spent every day of the past 30 years being grateful for that truth." The applause and cheers that followed were warm and genuine, a community celebrating a love story that had become part of their shared history. As the sun set on that anniversary celebration, Lucas and Lily sat together on the porch swing he had built years ago, watching their family, their friends, their life play out before them. "You have any regrets?" Lily asked, a question she had posed several times over their decades together, always curious if his answer would change. Lucas considered it seriously, as he always did, then shook his head. "Not a single one. You. Only that I didn't meet you sooner," Lily replied with a smile. "But then again, we might not have been ready for each other. Maybe we needed to go through what we did to appreciate what we found." "Maybe so," Lucas agreed, kissing the top of her head. "Either way, I'm grateful for every moment." They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes after years of knowing someone completely. The party continued around them, but they were in their own world, two people who had built something extraordinary from unpromising beginnings. The years continued to pass, each one bringing its own joys and challenges. More grandchildren arrived, and Lucas and Lily delighted in spoiling them in ways they had never been able to spoil their own children while building the ranch. They watched White Pine grow from a rough mining town to a proper community with schools and churches and civic organizations that Lily was active in. In 1912, when Lucas turned 62, he finally admitted that the hard physical work of horse training was becoming too much. It was a difficult confession for a man who had prided himself on his strength and capability, but Lily saw the relief in his eyes once he said it aloud. "You've earned rest," she told him firmly. "Thomas and the hands can manage the training. You've built something that will last beyond you." That's the definition of success. They spent more time together, just the two of them, rediscovering the quiet intimacy that had characterized their early days. They would ride out together across the ranch land, not to work but simply to enjoy the landscape they had called home for so long. Lucas taught Lily things about the land and the animals she had never known, and she shared observations that made him see familiar things in new ways. One afternoon in the spring of 1914, they rode to a spot on the far edge of their property where a small grove of cottonwood trees grew near the stream. It had always been one of Lily's favorite places, peaceful and beautiful. They sat together on a flat rock, watching the water flow. "I want to be buried here," Lucas said suddenly. "When my time comes, right here under these trees." Lily's throat tightened. They were both getting older and such thoughts were natural, but she hated to think about a time when Lucas would not be beside her. "Don't talk about that." "We have to sometimes," Lucas said gently. "I'm not planning on going anywhere soon, but when I do, I want to stay here on this land we built together, and I want you beside me eventually." "Together," Lily agreed, leaning against him. "We started this journey together, and we'll end it together, even if one of us has to wait a while for the other." They sat there until the sun began to set, neither wanting to break the spell of the moment, both aware that these quiet times together were becoming more precious. Lucas lived another 8 years, dying peacefully in his sleep in 1922 at the age of 72. Lily woke beside him that morning and knew immediately, even before touching his still warm hand, that he was gone. The grief was overwhelming, a physical pain that stole her breath. They had been married 44 years, had built a life together that exceeded anything either had imagined in those early desperate days. True to his wishes, they buried him under the cottonwood trees, with half the territory coming to pay respects to a man who had been respected for his integrity, his skill, and his devotion to his family. Lily stood dry-eyed through the funeral, holding herself together through sheer force of will, but that night in their bedroom, she finally let herself break, sobbing into the pillow that still smelled faintly of him. The months that followed were the hardest of Lily's life. Everything reminded her of Lucas. His chair at the dinner table, his clothes still hanging in the wardrobe, the way the light fell across the porch at sunset when they would have been sitting together. Her children tried to comfort her, but grief was a solitary journey and she had to walk it alone. Gradually, the sharp pain dulled to a persistent ache. Lily found purpose in her grandchildren, in the community work she had always been involved in helping Thomas and Alina manage the ranch that had grown into one of the most successful in the region. She wrote down the story of her life with Lucas, wanting her descendants to know how it had all begun, how love had grown from the ashes of one dream into something more beautiful than she could have imagined. She lived another 12 years, dying in the spring of 1934 at the age of 79. Her children found her in her favorite chair on the porch, a peaceful expression on her face, the worn gold band still on her finger, and the horse pendant Lucas had given her around her neck. They said it looked like she had simply decided to join Lucas after being apart from him long enough. They buried her beside him under the cottonwood trees, as she had requested. The ranch continued to thrive under Thomas's management, eventually passing to his children and then to their children, each generation adding to the legacy Lucas and Lily had built. The story of their meeting, of the mail-order bride who wasn't what was ordered and the cowboy who found her better than he dreamed, became part of family lore, passed down through the decades. The grave markers under the cottonwood trees read simply, Lucas Young 1850–1922, beloved husband, father, grandfather he built with his hands and loved with his whole heart. Lily Hammond Young 1855–1934, beloved wife, mother, grandmother she turned a house into a home and made dreams reality together. They had taken desperation and loneliness and transformed it into love, family, and legacy. They had built something that lasted, not just in the physical form of the ranch, but in the values they passed down, the love they demonstrated, the proof that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected circumstances. The Young Ranch still operates today, over a century after Lucas first offered a desperate young woman a job that changed both their lives. The main house has been expanded and modernized, but the core structure they built together remains. The cottonwood grove where they rest has grown thick and beautiful, a testament to the enduring nature of their love. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the sun sets over the Nevada landscape in shades of orange and pink and purple, ranch hands swear they can see two figures sitting on the old porch, hand in hand, watching over the land and the family they created together. It's just a romantic notion, of course, but in a place built on love and determination, where a desperate mail-order bride and a lonely cowboy found each other and built something extraordinary. Perhaps such romance is only fitting. Their story reminds us that life rarely goes according to plan, that sometimes our greatest blessings come disguised as disasters, and that love, real love, can grow from the most unlikely beginnings into something that transcends even death itself. It tells us that home is not a place, but the person you choose to build a life with. That family is created through devotion and daily choice. And that dreams, when shared with the right person, can exceed anything we might have imagined alone. Lucas and Lily Young lived and loved and left behind something beautiful. In the end, what more could anyone ask for? Their journey from strangers to soulmates, from desperation to deep contentment, stands as proof that sometimes, just sometimes, the universe conspires to bring exactly the right people together at exactly the right moment. And from that meeting, magic unfolds.